All right, zoning board, we are live. You're recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome everybody to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for November 19th, 2024. We have a scheduled public hearing, which is Devon Yacht Club. But before that, we're going to do an order of business first. We had a application prior that required additional notice. That notice was to expire. That notice was given by the applicant and expires today. So we're just going to have a motion. Is there any comments from that notice? Anybody here in the audience, or are you aware of any comments that came in? I don't believe so. I haven't seen that.
Record.
No, do you want to state I don't have the address is the 2 Bendigo, right?
2 Bendigo.
Bendigo Beach.
Anybody here or on the phone?
No.
Okay, make a motion.
All right, so maybe we'll have a motion to close the hearing in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the matter of Bendigo Beach LLC, 2 Bendigo Road, Amagansett, tax map 300-152-1-11.1. I make a motion to close the hearing and the record.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. All right, so I'll read the.
I'm gonna be recusing from this application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I'll read the hearing into the record. The applicant is Devon Yacht Club at 300 Abraham's Landing Road, Amagansett, Suffolk tax map number 300-127-3-16 and 17. The size and location is 6.61 acres at 300 Abraham's Landing Road in Amagansett. The description is a site plan, special permit, natural resources special permit, and various applications have been made to demolish the existing buildings, accessory structures, and infrastructure, and to rebuild and update the structures on the Devon Yacht Club. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code and 20 variances. In addition to any other relief necessary are required for this application as follows. Variance from 255-1110 of 25.9 feet for clubhouse where 70 feet is required, and 47 feet and 73.8 feet for decks and concrete pad respectively where 80 feet is required from Abraham's Landing Road. Variances from 255-440 of 106.7 feet for clubhouse, 130.9 feet for decks, walkways, 96.1 feet for bathhouse, 91.1 feet for sailing center, 51 feet for northwest tennis court, 36 feet for northeast tennis court, 97 feet for concrete pad, generator, and 150 feet for new deck on walkway to dock where 150 feet is required. Variances from 255-430 of 88 feet for staff residence, 58.8 feet for workshop, 61.6 feet for northwest tennis court, 56 feet for northeast tennis court, 62 feet for generator and concrete pads, 32 feet for transformer, RPZ, and 51 feet for parking area where 100 foot is required, and 90 feet and 80 feet for clubhouse and bathhouse, sailing center, septic systems respectively where 150 feet is required. The zoning district is A5, VE flood velocity flood zone, and the secret class is type 1. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posted?
I don't have them. But in the meantime, before we open the hearing, do the planning staff want to do a quick explanation to the board?
Yes, thank you. For the record, my name is Lisa LaCourie on behalf of the Planning Department. And I just want to open up by saying, as you just heard, the entire project is within the Natural Resource Special Permit jurisdiction and requires 20 variances. But the project also requires site plan approval from the Planning Board, and the the application has been under planning board review for more than 2 years, and there have been some positive changes made. The project is classified as a type 1 action pursuant to SECRA, and as an involved agency, and the two leading agencies in the town, the planning board and the zoning board, you will be required to coordinate. The SECRA lead agency determination has not been made. That will be made somewhat as part of this hearing process. And the planning department recommended to bring the application to you at this point in order to facilitate a coordinated review and obtain feedback on the concept, scope, and overall likelihood of obtaining variances. And as part of this hearing, comments will be solicited from the Zoning Board of Appeals on this initial project review. We do expect that there will be a second public hearing, and there will also be a hearing on the site plan in front of the planning board.
Thank you. Good?
Yes, I now have the affidavits of notice and posting. Everything appears to be in order, and the board has jurisdiction over this hearing.
Thank you. I think we have a report. Tina, you want to pull up the photos? All right, so I did the report this afternoon, and if you look, the property was properly posted. I'm going to walk around the property to the east and clockwise around the property, just to give you a brief. I didn't get exhaustive on the photographs, but just to get a sense of the property. So, next.
Hold on. Sorry.
So this is looking directly into the parking lot, and beyond that is the tennis court. Next. Courts. This is a shot taking a look at the clubhouse. Next. So this is now on the beach, and we're looking along the beach to the south. Next. This is the deck and flagpole. There's a flagpole beyond that's in question this evening. Next. Clubhouse, as it stands, it's winterized, as you can see, and then I'm going to walk continually to the south. Now just give me a second here. This building is the bathhouse? This is the bathhouse as you're looking at. I'm looking at a survey, but not every building is named on the survey. So again, we're continuing to the south. This is the latter part of still part of the bathhouse. Is that correct? Next. This building is a one-story frame building.
Staff housing.
Staff
I was just
housing.
gonna say, yeah.
Right. Okay. Next.
Part of the sailing center.
This is the sailing center. That's correct. Okay. Next. These are all on the eastern part. Now this is the marina that we're looking at. Now I'm going to turn and go towards the west. So we're walking towards the west. Keep going. There's a tennis court there. Turning around, looking north now into the parking area beyond. There's tennis courts to the right. There's tennis courts to the left as well. Next. This is the boat repair. Is that what it is? The boat repair shop, right? Right. Next.
That's the last one.
Okay, that's the last one. So pretty much talk about Rich.
Good evening. Richard Warren from InterScience Research Associates here on behalf of Devin Yaklo.
Rich, you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present Devin Yacht Club to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And thank you for visiting the site. I know this application is a little unusual for you. There's a lot, it's different than most of the applications that you see that come before the board. And I know the process that we're going through here is a little different than what you typically experience. So I thank you for that. We received the TAM from the town about 2 weeks ago. I'm going to address a couple of points in there, but I don't really intend to go through the TAM tonight. So tonight's really just an overview of the project. I'm here with David Sullivan, who's the current Commodore, Patty Garvey, who's the former Commodore. She's a co-chair of the Long Range Planning Committee for Devon Yacht Club, Jeff Grant, who was an officer of the Board of Governors and also the co-chair of the Long Range Planning. Beth Baldwin, one of the attorneys for the project, Eric Brown, one of the attorneys, Ethan Zawecki from TF Engineering, and Amanda Schiraldi from Aris Design, and Shannon Corcoran, who's like the glue holding us all together, making this project happen from my office. We're not going to have a dog and pony show. I'm going to do all the presentation tonight because I know that we're going to be back to talk to you at some other point. This application was filed 2.5 years ago. In February of 2022. The review process took us before the planning board initially. We went there several times after the application got filed to review the project. And in the March 2024 meeting, the planning board at that time felt that we needed to get variances from 2 special permit provisions in the code, that they could not move forward with the application without the board granting some relief to those 2 particular sections. So they suspended their review. We met with the planning department to work out a schedule to try to come before you because we realize that this is a multi-agency approval for this project and there's different steps that have to take place. Bless you.
Thank you.
The town attorney's office eventually determined that we would not need relief from those 2 particular special exception standards, one which was lot area, which is a definitional issue in the town code for us anyway, and one was parking. But it was determined that we did not need relief from those. So we're really here for you because we need variances from natural resources. This is actually a 13.82 acre site in total. By town code, you're required to subtract out wetlands and beaches. So that brings it down to the 6+ acres that was mentioned before, but it's actually a 13.822 acre piece of property. We have freshwater wetlands along Bendigo Road. We have a bulkheaded boat basin that has tidal wetlands, and we have the dune along the seaward side of the existing structures that faces Gardner's Bay. Because the town required setbacks on these features, there's really no reasonable envelope on this property within which to be able to reconstruct Devon Yacht Club that's here. The plan that we have before the town also requires some relief. So we need relief from those natural features. We also need relief from a setback off of Abrams Landing Road, which is on the image that you have up on the screen on the left-hand side. The clubhouse is currently located 5.8 feet from Abrams Landing Road. We're shifting it to 44 feet in order to improve that setback. The requirement is 70, so we still need some relief from the town. So when the board considers a relief for this, I think, I just wanted to just briefly touch on the standards. Whether the benefit to the applicant outweighs the detriment to the general health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood, whether the variance requested is the minimum necessary to alleviate the difficulty, at the same time preserving and protecting the character of the neighborhood. And then you're charged to actually evaluate it under 5 different standards, whether the project will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. We believe this will not. Whether there's an alternative feasible for the applicant, other than the area variances sought. Whether variances are substantial. That's probably the one that is probably the more troublesome one here on the project, but I want to talk about that a little bit. And whether the variances will cause an adverse impact on the environmental conditions. We believe that there are unique circumstances for this applicant and unique circumstances about the site condition. And we hope that when you evaluate the project as a whole, that you will find that this project is worthy of a variance for that we've requested. So a little bit about Devon. We had given to you books that hopefully you all got a chance to look at. If not, I suggest you take a look at them. This is a book that Devon put out after 100 years of their operations, called The Century of Summers. And it has a lot about the history of Devon. You'll see some images, and it talks about the services they provide to their membership. So it really talks about what this club means to their membership. So it's a not-for-profit corporation, has a maximum membership of 400. Then that's contained in their bylaws. Devon maintains a membership of 360 And they keep that little bit of buffer room on the top between 360 and 400 because they need to be able to accommodate when children age out of family memberships and they want to keep them in the club. So they have the ability to give them memberships, and they also have a provision in their bylaws that deals with divorce. So if a couple is married and they're there and they get divorced, they can each have their own membership. So it gives them a little bit of room there to deal with that. But they maintain a membership of about 360 with a cap of 400. Devon provides sailing instruction and sailboat racing for junior and adult sailors. They have a 36-slip marina that's in the bulkheaded basin on the south side of the property. They provide recreational and instructional tennis on their 8 tennis courts. They have a dock into Gardner's Bay, a bathing beach in front with which the members use, and the beach is also used for launching of small sailboats for their sailing classes. The clubhouse provides administrative office space for small, as you probably saw, it's pretty cramped. They have formal and informal dining that they give to their membership, and it's a place for the social functions for their membership. It's a seasonal club. Activities occur generally between Memorial Day through early October. So during the rest of the season, it's shut down. As you've seen it now, I mean, when you guys went there, it was like the last day or the last week of when the club was actually open, and it's really shut down for the remainder of the time. And the only people that are there are the administrative staff operating in their very small office. About Devon, you know, they have been a quiet and positive contributor to the town of East Hampton. I think it's something that also distinguishes them from other people that come before you. Members of Devon have made substantial gifts to the town of East Hampton. They gave the site for the Amagansett Library. They gave 130 acres on the bay encompassing Fresh Pond, Albert's Landing, and Little Albert's Landing beaches. They gave 1,300 acres running along from bay to ocean encompassing Napeague State Park. Devon Yacht Club quietly supports numerous community organizations, the Amagansett Fire District, the Historical Society, the Village Improvement Society, East Hampton Town Shellfish Hatchery, the Riverhead Foundation for Marine Research. During COVID, the club made donations to East Hampton and Amagansett Ambulance Associations and also East Hampton and Springs Food Pantry. So they don't just think about just themselves, they think about the community that they're in. Each year, Devon also provides scholarships to East Hampton High School seniors who have interest in marine science. So it's a quiet little club nestled on the shoreline of Gardner's Bay in the woods. It has a rich and long history. Devon Yacht Club was created in 1911. Certificate of incorporation was filed in 1916, so it's operated continuously for 108 years. You know, it's been longer than the town of zoning, which was established in 1957, longer than natural resources regulations created in 1984, the state wetlands regulations, the tidal wetlands of 1977, the freshwater wetlands of 1986, the coastal erosion regulations that came into effect in 1981, and the flood insurance program of 1968. The adoption of all these regulations over the period of time during Devon's ownership and continuous operation really causes a unique hardship on this club. You know, they're different than somebody that just comes in and buys a piece of property today and they buy it with their eyes open and say, these are the regulations that affect me. They've been here doing their thing for 108 years, and these regulations have come in. In the process of going through this project, they've been very careful in terms of designing the improvements. They want to improve the aspects of the environmental protections that are on the site, all the while trying to meeting the needs of their membership. You know, it's clear that the Devon facilities are functional. They have a certificate of occupancy that allows them to operate, so they're legally existing, so they can continue to operate the same way they operate today. Following their 100th year celebration that was identified in the book, the Board of Governors felt that they should take stock. But where are we in terms of the future for our club? Take a look in the mirror and do an assessment of the club. In short, they created an internal group that was tasked with assessing the future needs of their facilities. They examined the services they provide to membership and the types of programs they offer, and they took a deep dive into examining their infrastructure, the buildings, the foundation, the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, and the waste disposal systems. They held focus groups with their staff, they held focus groups with committee chairs, and also they pooled their membership. They came away with several conclusions. Devon didn't want to change the soul of the club. That's important for them because Devon is actually, more than any of the individuals, they look at themselves as really just caretakers for it. They didn't want to expand membership. They didn't want to expand the types of services that they provide. They needed to maintain the existing services for their membership, however, so they didn't want to look at reducing the types of service that they already provide. The infrastructure is clearly showing its age, and they felt that Devon could be better stewards for the property. So Patty Garvey, who's co-chair of the committee back here, she was part of all of that, and if you needed to ask further questions, she's here to answer those. But Devon took a proactive approach to try to address this. Their intention is really fourfold: to bring the facility into code compliance to as great a degree as possible, while retaining all the functions for their membership, to strengthen the ability of this club to resist storm damage and protect it for the future, to meet the minimum needs of the club while providing significant environmental improvements, which I think you've seen on the plan, and proceed in a sensitive manner that protects the spirit and the soul of this club that's important to its membership. I look at Devon as kind of an institution. You don't find many places in East Hampton that have been around for 108 years. Businesses come and go, people come and go, but this has been around for a long time. It's an institution, at least in my mind, and I would like to think that the efforts that they're trying to do would be supported by the town. They've been respectful in the process. When they first decided to embark on this project, before we even filed applications, we met with the town board on 2 separate times, before COVID and after COVID, because COVID put this project a little bit on a pause while they tried to figure out where the world was going. And then we filed applications with all the agencies. At significant expense, Devon has engaged all the professionals involved in this: engineers, surveyors, landscape architects, all the design professionals, which have been very careful to design this project to meet the minimum needs of the club, but also in a manner that provides environmental improvement. It's been formally presented to the planning board. We've been before the town's architecture review board. We've met with the building department, the highway department, the fire marshal, the Suffolk County Health Department, the town engineer. We've met with the planning director, spoken with the planning director about storm drainage on Abraham's Landing Road. We presented the project to the East Hampton Town trustees, of which I understand they wrote a letter of support for this project. We presented the project to the Amagansett CAC. And it was favorably received there. I think I stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest when I was there, because they're not allowed to support projects, and the members got into a little internal fight about why they can't support this project. But I think and hope maybe you receive some letters from some of those people individually. And Devon has also spoken to their neighbors. They've been transparent on this project. It's not something that they're trying to hide. They've been transparent, and anytime anybody has a question about it, we have been upfront relative to what we need to do with this project. The plan for this is 2 phases. We have a phasing plan. So phase 1 involves the the demolition and construction of the clubhouse. Can I move over there? Oh, you have a pointer.
Touch the screen and it will mark it so people know.
I'm not going to touch it. I've done that once before and I made a mistake. So clubhouse is right here, existing clubhouse. Excuse me?
If people that are watching on
they can't see me point?
They can't see where you're pointing.
Oh, so I have to touch it. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So that's,
I did it once and it locked this thing up, and I don't want to do that.
Bottom right, the bottom left. Up top.
Oh, you messed me up.
okay,
So that's the existing clubhouse, the proposed clubhouse, located inside that red circle. The area immediately below that is where the sanitary system is going and the parking. The phase 1 is the area. I guess I have to do it. Phase 1 essentially is divided in a line about here. Phase 1 being to the left and phase 2 being to the right. So Devon needs to operate. Devon can't shut down for the time that it takes to build this entire facility. So this is designed to redevelop this site in 2 separate phases, which would start on Labor Day and finish beginning of June the following year for phase 1. And then in the second phase would be the remainder. They would take down the bathhouse, they would take down the small building that is a staff house and the sailing center, and also the staff house that is along Bendigo Road. And then that part would be reconstructed the following year. So the plan is carefully choreographed, and in order to make this project work for Devon, the hope is that we get through the approval process with all of the agencies by September of 2025, which is next September, because they need about a year in order to get everything ready, because this is a big project to do in a short period of time. So they're working with their contractors. They're going to be doing some of the construction off-site. It's a timber frame building, so they have to get all that stuff together. So they need a year prep before they can actually come in. So the plan is to start phase 1 September 2026. And then in June of 2027, they would open up phase 1. And then the fall of 27, they would do phase 2. All the buildings to be constructed will be building code compliant for the high wind load. At present, they install temporary seasonal supports inside to hold the roof up because the building is so old. In case there's a heavy snow load, they don't want the roof to come down. The buildings will be elevated on pilings. They'll be FEMA compliant, where none of the buildings on site at present are. The buildings will meet ADA requirements and be handicap accessible. The existing clubhouse, they've made adjustments as best they can to provide accessibility for their members, but it is not accessible. The bathrooms are not handicap accessible. They have a small ramp in the front to get people in and out, but the buildings are not ADA compliant. The buildings have been positioned to retreat as far as reasonably possible on the property, given the infrastructure that has to go along with this. As you come in, the entrance drive off of Bendigo Road, you'll see in that area there's parking. Between the parking and the building is the sanitary system, and then that's forcing where the building is going. But we have tried to squeeze it so that we are improving the setback from the crest of dune. The structures will all be connected to IA sanitary systems. There's a dune restoration that's proposed in front of the clubhouse. Right now, when you're there, you'll see that the sand is essentially level to the back of the clubhouse. There's dunes on either side. One of the things in terms of making this more resilient is to try to provide better protection from storms. They'll have stormwater runoff control. There's no change in use or operation with this project. So the club will function in the future the way it functions now. We've submitted a letter to you signed by the Commodore that identifies the membership, and the club has agreed to, in part of the planning board review, to provide a cap on the membership at 400, something the town doesn't have now, but their bylaws have it. They could, if they wanted to in the future, vote to change the bylaws by membership, but they're agreeing to do a restriction cap at 400 with the town. So that is, I think, another benefit for the town. We think this project's consistent with the town's recently adopted coastal resiliency plan. The CARP recognizes that Devon is in an area that is not in a high erosion zone. However, we've seen an increased frequency in storms, as we've all seen. And bringing the structures into FEMA compliance and providing some measure of retreat is appropriate on here. The CARP's resilience and adaptation goals two appear to be on point, preserving and enhancing town's natural features, something this plan does, and reducing property damage and loss due to coastal flood events and shoreline erosion, something that the elevation of structures making them FEMA compliant would do. So with this project, we need relief from the natural resources. We believe it's consistent with the objectives enumerated in 255-410 and 255-415. We recognize that there's wetlands, tidal wetlands, dunes, and they all possess restrictions. And the setbacks that are imposed by the code really present some practical difficulty in the site. If you just look blindly at the setbacks and you look at the table that's in the TAM, And we've been back and forth with the planning department over the past year and a half about trying to define what variances we actually need. And you don't focus on the larger benefits of what this project proposes, I think you'd find that the relief is daunting. I mean, there's difficulty in terms of meeting setbacks on this property. There's virtually no reasonable envelope on the property. But yeah, I think that you're charged to look at this property as a whole. I think you're charged to look at this project as a whole in terms of the benefits that this brings. There will be significant improvements to the environmental features on the site. And I think that I don't want to tell you what your business is, but I actually believe that it would be appropriate for you to, when you're balancing the equities of this project, that when you evaluate the variance requests, that I think that you probably need to consider the inherent and very real practical difficulty that the imposition of the regulations have put on this property that's been in existence for 108 years operating here. So I think in balancing that against the environmental improvements that are proposed with this, that are significant, which I'll go through, I think the balance tips towards this project. The TAM that was provided recognizes many of the environmental improvements that we're doing. There are 3 points on the TAM that I just want to touch base on quickly, because I think they are important to kind of keep in focus with this. I talked briefly with Lisa about this earlier today on the phone. There's a discussion that considers the reduction in the total square footage of the project. There's a discussion about the potential relocating staff housing off-site. And then there's discussion of considering elevating the structures to something higher than what FEMA currently requires. So regarding the square footage, the modernization of this club that's been around for a long time does include some strategic increase in square footage. And I think for those of you that had the ability to walk through the club, you saw some of the difficulties that this club has. You have a kitchen that's it's undersized in terms of the ability to operate the way they need. You've got an office that's 470 square feet for a 400-member club where people are tripping over boxes. They have no storage. Again, if you look at the sterile numbers, it could be difficult, but the hardship here is important. This project wasn't designed around numbers. It was designed about the needs of the club. All the designers that were working on this were told by the club to keep their pencils sharp. Don't propose more space than they need. They have to pay for it. Now, this is entirely funded by the membership. This isn't being funded by public dollars that you see for some other coastal projects that happen out here on the East End. This is entirely funded by the membership. So they wanted to make sure that they're getting what they need to protect the legacy of this club for the future, but don't build any more than they need to. So the plans that have been submitted really address the minimum needs of what they have. If there's a reduction in the square footage of this project, if it's something that's required, or elimination of existing services or facilities that the club has, this project's going to go away. And we talked a little bit about that at the planning board at one point when they were talking about trying to eliminate tennis courts. And this is difficult. It's probably a little difficult to talk about, but this is not like negotiating with a single-family homeowner who stands here and says, yeah, I'll give you another 5 feet or 10 feet of buffer or whatever it might be. This is a 400-member club, 360 members club, that if you take away facilities or if you carve this plan up to a point where they don't get the benefit of the probably $20 million or more that they're going to spend to fix this up, the membership will not support it. So the increase in square footage to meet the operational needs has really been strategically located. One of the things that in the design we said, we don't want to see the increase in building coverage on this site. So even though we have more square footage, there's no increase in building coverage on this site. It's actually a little bit smaller, a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. So we made sure that we weren't, the environmental impact part of this project, to me is the coverage. It's not necessarily the square footage, it's the coverage. The membership's not changing, the uses aren't changing. So how do we make sure that we're improving the environmental impact? So we made sure that the coverage didn't increase from building coverage. Almost all the square footage increase that we have in this project is in really 2 buildings. One is the clubhouse, and the other is in the staff housing. To to help make it easier for you to understand, we had some boards prepared from the architect. I'm actually going to put them up, and maybe we can put them up on the screen too.
Ones, I think it's number 5 and the attachments of everything. Just the comparison GFA plan.
These are these colored boards. I think that you should have gotten. I think they're helpful for you to understand actually what's happening in the club. So the plan on the bottom.
GFA comparison.
This is first and second floor. I want the existing first.
That's what she said.
Is this it?
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Existing first floor, proposed first floor on the plan. So the existing kitchen, which is the area that's shown in pink, on the bottom is, when we walked through, you saw that there were racks of dinnerware on these rolling racks that are in the way of people that are working. When we walked through the kitchen and we walked out the back, you see that outside the back door, they have an area that's covered. It's a small deck that they use for storing linens and their staff uniforms. And there's freezers, there's ice machines, there's flour coolers. It's a place where the staff sit to have a break out, which is out right next to the dumpster. So what they've tried to do is they've tried to make sure that they can accommodate a larger kitchen, which this now shows. It's about 1,000 square feet larger, the kitchen. And effectively what it does is it takes up the area of the snack bar, which is that blue area down there on the upper right-hand, left-hand corner. Of the existing, and that's being moved upstairs to the snack bar. In order to maintain square footage, they took the snack bar, they moved that upstairs, and they're using that space down there to expand the kitchen. The bathrooms that they have at present, which are shown in tan, are not handicap accessible. They will not have handicap accessible bathrooms. They need room for electrical and fire suppression. This building is going to be compliant with building code. Those are these yellow areas that are shown in the building for electrical and fire. The dining area and the bar area, which is all the blue, is all the dining and bar area. This area is being reorganized in a more linear fashion along there. The small cramped offices, which are the pinkish on there, that's moving upstairs as well. So office is moving upstairs, the snack bar is moving upstairs, and then we have elevator, stairway, entry lobby, first floor, second floor, all to meet handicap accessible. On the second floor,
Thank you.
so this is where the space actually is occurring on the second floor. That's the second floor right now. It's an apartment. It's actually going into the staff housing. This is proposed. Here's the snack bar. It came from downstairs, went up on top of the building. This is the only new room right here in terms of the club. Actually, there's one other new room, but in terms of the facilities for the membership, this is the only new room. It's the bridge boardroom. When you go to the club today and you see they've got a very active bridge component. I don't play bridge. I don't even know what you call it. Bridge league, I guess. When I've been in there, it is quiet. I mean, you can hear a pin drop while they're playing bridge, and they've got somebody with a computer who's doing something, and there's people handing out cards, and they're all sitting around tables quietly playing bridge. That's right in the dining room. It's right in the dining room. So what this does is it gives them
It's okay. Be gone.
This is a quiet space. Was that my 15 minutes?
No, it's 30.
Oh. I'm having too much fun, sorry. I'll keep going. This room now gives them a space where they can actually play bridge upstairs separate. So that's not new function. It will also give the board of the club a place to meet. It'll be a temperature-controlled room. The clubhouse shuts down, and the bulk of this clubhouse is going to shut down from temperature. There's going to be some areas, the office, which is upstairs now, over here, the pink, that will be temperature-controlled. The bathrooms will be temperature-controlled, and the lobby in this area. But everything else is going to shut down, temperature-wise. So it gives them a place to meet, where right now they don't have that. They'll have storage. The office is increasing in size. It's going from 470 to 750 square feet. It's not obsessively large, but it actually gives them some reasonable space. When we went in there and looked, so you could actually see it, you see the people are stepping over boxes to try to actually find a place. These books that we handed out actually had to come from someone's garage because they don't even have a place in the clubhouse to store them. So we had to get them from the garage where they keep it. They have storage now. They don't have storage at present. The storage is the brown area shown back there. This is probably the only other new room, but it's actually not something that functions for membership. It's a staff break room. It's a place for them to have meals. It's a place for them to, when they do have breaks from work. So it's about trying to take care of the people that work for you. Rooftop mechanicals are going to be within a recess on the roof, so they will not be visible. Right now, they are visible from the front of the building. So these numbers might look ambitious in terms of the square footage being increased, but it's reasonable for a modernization of a facility, and it's all designed in a way that minimizes the impact to this club to try to make sure that it's all above existing square footage. So this way, we're not increasing the ground area coverage. The sailing center and the bathhouse, which we have drawings. I'm not going to put them up because I'm talking too long already. There's
Just maybe we can get a sense of the intent for this evening. Are you addressing phase one, or are you looking to?
I'm talking about the entire project.
No, okay.
Yeah, the entire project. Yeah. So I'll try to speed it up a little bit.
All right, just one quick thing.
Sure.
Some of the colors don't match in the print I have. Can you just confirm the date on these? The date I have is 10/8/2024 on these underneath. 10/8? Okay, so it's just the printer probably. Okay.
The sailing center provides necessary space for sailing equipment, storage, classroom for instruction, and also a place where they can actually instruct the kids during inclement weather. There's a small second-story mezzanine over top of the sailing center that provides some storage. There's an office there, a small office for their sailing instructor, and a place that they can handle underwater protests. The bathhouse, right now the sailing center and the bathhouse are in a single building. They're going to be split up into two separate buildings. When we went there and you saw it, the bathhouse is open to the sky. You walk in and the lockers are underneath roof portions, but the hallways and the areas, the open areas are open to the sky. This is not a winterized building. It's going to be identical to that with a new one. And it provides bathroom and shower facilities for sailors, boaters, tennis players, and the members that go to the beach. Both these buildings will be connected to IA systems. The staff workforce housing, there's also an increase in square footage. So I said it's two buildings. It's the clubhouse and the staff workforce housing. The workforce housing is going to increase by about 1,800 square feet total in terms of the square footage from what we have now on site, which is in 3 separate spaces. It's above the clubhouse. It's in the cottage that is next to the current bathhouse sailing center, and it's also in the barracks that you see along the side of Bendigo Road. There's no increase in occupancy. They house 26 staff people at the present time. The building is to be code compliant. It's to be ADA accessible. All the rooms, the bathrooms, the hallways, et cetera. So in reality, the space the increase in square footage that we have, it's necessary for this club. This is a modernization of a facility that's been around for a long time. We're not looking to change the character. They've been very sensitive in terms of how they designed it because they want to keep the soul of the club and they don't want to change the uses of the club. So if there's a reduction in square footage, the project's probably going to go away. And then all the environmental benefits that come with it would also disappear. There was a discussion in the TAM about exploring removing the staff and moving it off-site. The concept really doesn't work for Devon. They employ 75 people during the summer months: dining, wait staff, chefs, kitchen staff, sailing instructors, administrative staff, clerical. Of the 75, approximately 20 people are local people that they hire, to help with the sailing programs. But they provide seasonal workforce housing for 46. They have 2 other sites that they house that are legal with COs that they house people. But they house 26 people on site. There's 2 in an apartment on the 2nd floor of the clubhouse. There's 2 in the cottage next to the bathhouse. And then there's 22 in the barracks. These people are generally hired, they're kitchen staff, wait staff, and tennis instructional. They generally come from H-2B visas. Most of them come and they don't have driver's licenses, they don't drive. Some of them have bicycles, some of them don't even have bicycles, so they don't have transportation. Providing housing on site is critical for them. The plan to move it off site to reduce impact, we would posit to the board that the plan that we propose already reduces impact of the staff housing on site. We're consolidating into a single building that's now going to be more central on the property. And it's being positioned in an area that's already disturbed. It's an area that's gravel. It's where the workshop building is located. And again, there's no increase in occupancy. The relocation provides significant environmental benefits. The structures on Bendigo will be demolished. The area will be restored with native vegetation. The cesspools located in and adjacent to the wetlands will be removed. The land bridge that separates the 2 wetlands pockets on either side of where the staff housing is will be removed. They'll allow reconnection of wetlands in the drainage system. It's easy to say, try to find a way to move them off site, but it's really not that easy. It creates difficulties for the accessibility for Devon, for their staff. It's difficult to find a property where you're going to now put 26 people, in a town that's zoned single-family residential mostly. So we're probably going to be back here asking for variances for another site for some sort of density change, or we'd have to go to the town board for a change of zone for something like that. We'd have to find something that's between 3.25 and 6.5 acres for 26 people. So that's another hardship that comes on Devon if you say it has to move off site. Creating workforce housing, we recognize it's difficult, and all you have to do is read the newspaper and see the troubles that the town has to try to establish workforce housing in East Hampton. Devon says these are our staff. We're responsible for them. We should take care of them. So keeping them on site here, we believe, is a proper conclusion relative to the idea of trying to move them off site. And we think that the plan that we put together in terms of the relocation of them and the positioning of the new staff housing is appropriate. There was a suggestion, and this I'll go through a little quicker because I know I'm using up my time, that Devon consider elevating the structures higher
That's
than...
my question.
Excuse me?
That's actually my question.
Which?
But elevating buildings.
Elevating the structure higher. So there was a suggestion that we should try to elevate the structures higher than what's proposed. The current plans are compliant with floodplain requirements, the federal floodplain requirements. The new FEMA maps came out September 25th, 2009. That's the latest FEMA maps that are required in terms of the elevations. And those are based upon a 100-year frequency storm, the elevations. New York State in 2008 established 2 additional feet above the FEMA elevation. What they were finding is there's so many ratables being constructed, they didn't know when the FEMA maps are actually going to come out, that they added 2 feet of freeboard. The New York State Building Code added 2 feet of freeboard. So the construction of what we're proposing to do here is actually going to be 2 feet higher than what the federal government requires. The federal government requires. They don't require freeboard. Federal government, that's a state requirement. So it'll actually be 2 feet higher. During the changeover of the new FEMA maps from September 25th, 2009, from the old FEMA maps, they also changed the datum. They went from NGVD 1929 to NAVD 1988. That change in datum was to be reflective of sea level rise from 1929 to 1988. And it's about a foot. The surveyors go to a website and they can locate exactly, 0.92, 1.12, and it's geographic. But generally they say that sea level rose about a foot over that year from general purpose. So number one, the change of FEMA maps over what we have here today in terms of construction is accommodating for a rise of sea level that's already occurred. We're going to be meeting FEMA requirements for the analysis, the very detailed analysis they did for the new FEMA maps, and we have 2 feet of freeboard. Importantly, that this structure is going to be constructed on pilings, so it'll be structurally able to be lifted if it ever needs to be lifted in the future. Raising the floors from what we have right now without relief to the height would probably take out second floor space in this, which is something that's necessary. So it's something that actually we don't think is necessary at this time. We think that we are compliant, and we think that the freeboard gives us time and room to deal with the rising seas that probably are happening. Some people don't agree with it, but I think I do agree with it. And it's something that could be handled in the future if it's ever necessary. So this project brings significant environmental benefits. The existing antiquated sanitary systems are all going to be replaced with IA systems. The clubhouse is going to have a new treatment system that's superior to what's there today. Meets health department design flow. We're not asking for grandfathered flow. We meet health department design flow on the site, and it meets the elevation above groundwater. There's been one troubling element for this project, for me anyway, in terms of the design, was that the proposed sanitary system is getting 10 feet closer than the existing. It's getting better treatment. IA is certainly superior to what's there. So I went back to our engineering group and said, you have to find a way. You have to find a way to make sure that our sanitary system is a little further away than what's existing. So they went back and they actually have done a slight redesign. They talked with the health department. We need a little bit of relief between the building and the leaching galleys, what's there. And we're going to be submitting a plan that shows the septic system now moving slightly further away than what's existing. So the system's going to be further away from wetlands. It's going to improve technology, and it's going to meet groundwater, and it's going to meet design flow. So the sanitary system is something that is going to be better than what's there.
Excuse me, those are further away from the bluff crest and the wetlands on that side.
From the wetlands. From
Which wetlands?
Further away from the wetlands, yes.
From the ones on the shore?
I have the drawing here. I can show it to you if you wanted to see it.
The freshwater, okay.
Yeah, the freshwater wetlands. Again, the relocation of the staff housing provides environmental benefits. The cesspools coming out of the wetlands, the reconnection of the wetlands, the restoration of the habitat. The parking on site is being redesigned, and we were able to increase the number of parking spaces on site from 40 to 78 without any increase in the total lot coverage, without any increase in coverage for parking. It's permeable. All the surfaces for the parking will be permeable. The driveway that is going up to the clubhouse, which is on a slope, will be using permeable pavers instead of gravel. So they are concerned about trying to make sure that they're dealing with stormwater runoff. We have a stormwater runoff plan. We've got, you've probably seen the package. I mean, it's 6 inches thick, the drawings and everything. So we're providing stormwater runoff on the site that currently doesn't exist. Landscaping on the site will be all native, with the exception of one small area between the 2 banks of tennis courts, which is a small portion of lawn where the kids sit and have their lunch and they talk with their tennis instructors. So I think that when you consider this project and you actually review it against the standards, I think you're going to find that the benefit to the applicant does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood. And the variances being requested are really the minimum necessary in order to alleviate the difficulty that's been imposed on this club. The design efforts were really taken with care to preserve the character of the neighborhood, the general health and safety and welfare of the town as a whole, but also try to save the soul of Devon Yacht Club in a redevelopment. We don't think there's going to create any detriment to nearby properties. We have the neighbors that have surrounded this property had been spoken to by Devon, and they've all said they have no objection to what's being proposed. This project will only create environmental benefit, positive impacts to the neighborhood. The difficulty was not self-created. The difficulty here was created by the imposition of the regulations on a facility that's owned this property for 108 years. So I think when you look at it in totality, and I'm coming to the end, when you look at it in totality and you acknowledge the unique situation that Devon has, I think and hope that you'll conclude that the plan that we have before you is appropriate, beneficial, and sensitive. This is a significant effort for this club to modernize this facility. We think that the project is mutually beneficial to both the membership as well as to the town. And again, Devon's kept their pencil sharp in this redesign. So this way, the space that they have is only what they need. They've worked hard to address the requirements of the town code, the town objectives. There was a worry mentioned to me during one of the conversations about, well, if we give this to Devon, what happens to some other project like the recent sale of something out in Montauk that may have like non-conforming stuff? It's a recent sale of something new. So somebody coming and buying it buys in with knowing what the regulations are, where Devon has these regulations that have been imposed on them during this. So they've been continuously operating for 108 years. I think they have unique and unnecessary hardship. So the TAM, the final part of the TAM suggests that the planning department is looking for some comment from the board about this project, and whether or not you think this project is something that's worthy of the variances. Because the next step is for SECRA to take place, a determination of lead agency, which Lisa and I have talked about. That's probably most appropriate to be the planning board. Although I don't want to say if you guys want it, you get to fight it out with the planning board. We don't have any control over it. It's an internal decision, but somebody needs to be lead agency. Somebody's got to review the environmental documents, ultimately leading to a negative declaration somewhere along the way. We expect that we're going to be back before you at some point, but given that that's the next step, my guess is we probably won't be back before you anytime before February or March or maybe April. I don't know. It all depends upon the SECRA process. There's a 30-day determination of lead agency and then having to go through the process. And we'll be working with Lisa in terms of getting her information to do what she needs to do. So thank you for your patience and listening to me. I know I'm long-winded, but I think it's important for you to hear, a little bit more about this club than just the nuts and bolts of the numbers. This is something that is important for this membership, and they've worked very hard with a lot of cost and a lot of angst to try to get a plan that they think provides, and I believe provides, significant environmental improvement to the site for the town's benefit, and also gives the Devon Yacht Club the benefits they need for maintaining the legacy of this club. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Now, board members, now, and Rich too, that's a good overview. I'm sure we're going to want to get into some chewable facts as we go through questions and stuff like that. And board members, I'm wondering if maybe we suggest listening to Lisa present to us, and then we decide, because I'm sure we have to get into this in more detail because you're looking for comments from us.
Yeah, and I know we have to come back and address the very specifics of the details to you, but I felt it's important for you. I know you all got to see the club, and you got to see the plans when you were there, but we didn't. I tried very hard not to talk about what I talked about tonight here because I didn't think that was appropriate. I think I wanted you to hear about what this actually means to the membership, why they did what they did, how they got to where they are, and what we think the improvements are. But we're happy to have whatever dialogue with this board we need to get through this.
Okay, so if it's okay with us, should we turn it over to Lisa and maybe listen to
Yes.
her and then we decide?
And
I
then
think
have
that's a
where
very
to go
good
from
idea.
here.
Because I have questions.
Yeah, we're gonna have
Yeah,
questions.
yeah.
I don't know if the questions, and we're gonna probably have some public comment tonight, but I don't think tonight is gonna be enough to ask all the questions and really get into
You have
the
to
chewing,
absorb.
No, I
the
know,
chewing
but I
of
have a
it.
few that
But we
I
can-
have to
we'd be happy to-
process the starting point.
And
you
Lisa
know,
may
Right
address some
now.
of those
Yeah, yeah.
questions.
All right, so we'll turn it over to the planning department.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
How are you, Lisa?
I'm fine. Should I be sworn in?
Yes. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And if you can move your mic down a little bit.
Thank you. It's between our eyes. I do, and thank you. As I said before, Lisa LaCory on behalf of the planning department, and we did work together on this. So while my name is on it, I did want you to know that this is something that reflects the entire department. The Devon Yacht Club property is characterized by multiple significant, fragile, and protected natural features. More than half of the 13.82 acres of deeded lot area is protected, unbuildable land according to our code. And so it results in the lot area, as we call it, 6.6 acres. The wetlands complex traversing the property has been identified as one of the most magnificent in all of the town, with high plant diversity, important habitat value, critical flood resiliency, and water quality benefits. The property has about 760 linear feet of coastline along Gardeners Bay, along with significant beach and dunescape features. So you can see a bunch of that on the aerial photograph. The zoning is A5 residential, flood hazard overlay, and coastal erosion overlay zones 2 and 3. The existing use, it's a membership yacht club, fits the definition of membership yacht club in the code, and it is a conforming use. So even though it's in a residential zone, that is a conforming use in the residential zone with a special permit. And without going too far into the weeds, the use predates zoning, so it doesn't need a special permit to exist or to continue to exist the way that it is. It will require a special permit for this proposal because of the expansion and what is proposed. And that will be a special permit in front of the planning board. So in addition to the extensive protected natural features, a longtime feature of this landscape has been the intensely developed Devon Yacht Club itself. And as you've heard from the applicant's agent, the proposal is to upgrade the aging facility, make it more flood resilient and protective of the natural features. And to do this, the application is to demolish all of the existing buildings except for one 538 square foot marina building, and to replace 6 of the buildings with 5 new ones, install new infrastructure and parking. 4 tennis courts will be relocated, and the remaining 4 will be resurfaced. Maybe we could go to the site plan now. The boat basin fueling facility is proposed to remain as is, and as you've heard from Rich Warren, the construction will meet the FEMA and the sanitary and drainage standards, but it will also require 20 variances and an NRSP. The gross square footage of the building area is proposed to increase from 18,932 square feet to 26,985 square feet, which comprises a 43% expansion. So throughout the TAM and review of the project, comparisons have been made between the existing and the proposed structures. But as these are completely new buildings, the minimum dune crest, wetlands, and yard setbacks must be met. So the same as any new construction project. When you remove the buildings, it's new. It's not like we're looking at the 50% expansion or whatever. They're completely new buildings. And 3 types of variances are required. 9 are from the wetlands, 8 are from the dune crest, and 3 are from the Abrams Path front yard line. So the TAM describes some of the attributes of the high-quality freshwater wetlands on the site and how these wetlands drain into the marina basin and into Gardeners Bay. And so the assessment of the project and the variances considers both the potential impact of the stormwater contributions and the physical alteration of the land in such close proximity to the wetlands. So table 3 in the TAM, and I'm not going to put it up, you've got it, highlights in yellow what the variances are for the wetlands. And so again, the overview is the project is to install drainage where none exists, relocate the buildings and structures landward from Gardeners Bay and in an upland direction from the freshwater wetlands. But partly counterbalancing these positive features are 7 of the buildings and structures are proposed to meet less than half of the minimum wetland setbacks. And the site is extremely constrained, and a large amount of development exists and is proposed. So in terms of the staff residence, we agree with the applicant's assessment that the removal of the existing staff residence and septic system, the main one, down here. You recall there are 3 locations for staff residents, but that big one right there bisects that incredible wetland system. And so removing that and the septic system and the bridge is a very positive feature of this project, and we commend the applicant for that. But we note that the new 5,126 square foot 2-story structure is almost double the size of the existing staff residences, and it will only be 12 feet from the wetlands. We support the proposal for the applicant to propose and to continue to provide staff housing. That's something we wish everybody did, right? All our businesses. But we were asking, since everything's going to be removed, if there was a possibility of locating some of this on another property, not as constrained as this one. In terms of the workshop, a new 807 square foot workshop is proposed to be located 41.2 feet from the wetlands, requiring a 58.8 foot wetland setback variance. Boat workshop activities often use toxic and hazardous chemicals, which have the potential to contaminate nearby wetlands and the high groundwater table. And to guard against that, we've suggested meeting the construction standards of Article 12 and also that are excerpted into the Town Code 255 212A. The septic systems, they're removing 3 septic systems, the one that's right there serving the residents along Bendigo Road. It's a very positive thing to be removing that, but we note that they fail to meet the minimum setbacks. The depth to groundwater and current design standards and replacing with low nitrogen IA systems will better treat the waste before discharging into the underlying soils and groundwater, which ultimately discharges into Gardeners Bay. But the large amount of development proposed on the site limits where these structures can be placed. So we're pleased here that there's a proposal to move them further from the wetlands, and we're eager to be reviewing that. I think that's another positive change that's been made over this review process. The tennis courts, and just to clarify, there are 4 boxes indicating tennis courts on the plan, but each of them have 2 tennis courts. So the northeast tennis courts require a 56-foot wetland variance from the boat basin, and the northwest tennis courts, a 61.6-foot variance from the wetlands to the south. The remaining 4 tennis courts are just going to be resurfaced. They don't need any wetlands variances. And drainage structures are proposed beneath the new courts, and pavement and driveways and parking areas will also have drainage. And some of that is between where these tennis courts are and where the boat basin and where the other wetlands are. So some of the, the runoff will be contained and treated before hitting the wetlands, and it'll separate the tennis courts from the wetlands. And so while the courts themselves are not anticipated to have major impacts, the 8 tennis courts displace land or occupy land that would otherwise could accommodate other structures. But you've heard from the applicant that they need to accommodate everything and all the activities that are there now. So you've got this balancing act, what to do with all of this development that's proposed. We do note that there is a certificate of occupancy for 8 tennis courts on the property. In terms of parking, the new parking area proposed, they're proposing more parking than there is now, and it's proposed to be approximately 49 feet from the wetlands within the boat basin to be served by drainage structures. As I've mentioned, these wetlands are surrounded by bulkheading, and the impacts of the proposed parking are not expected to be large along that southern area of the property. But that being said, the 5,467 cubic yards of fill proposed for the site is going to be as close as 1 foot from those major sensitive wetlands. And the applicant has explained that the fill is required to allow the drainage structures to achieve a minimum 2 foot above the highest groundwater elevations to allow the dry sand to filter out particles and contaminants. And the fill is also required to allow the septic galley, leaching galleys to achieve a 3-foot separation to groundwater in accordance with the town code and the health department requirements. The site does not currently provide drainage structures, and the installation of proposed stormwater management will have a beneficial impact to the wetlands and the groundwater. But we're still concerned that construction so close to the wetlands. The applicant has supplied a construction protocol and a draft stormwater pollution prevention plan proposing silt fencing and hay baling at the limit of disturbance. But at a 1 foot setback, there's no room for errors. And we're asking the applicant to seek opportunities to increase the distance between the access driveway and the parking and the wetlands to the south. And there appears to be some space available. On page 18 of the TAM, we did a little excerpt kind of showing that area, that perhaps there could be some area in there when they're redoing the septic layout, perhaps there's some other area to get more than 1 foot away. So let's move now to the dune coastal issues and the dune crest setbacks. The TAM provides some background on the coastal issues put forward in the local waterfront revitalization plan and the coastal assessment and resiliency plan, also known as CARP. And neither study identified this area as a high risk coastline. Instead, they characterize it as a relatively stable area, and Devon's proposal to relocate the structures farther from the shoreline and dune crest and to meet and exceed the design flood elevations in the coastal AZ zones will enhance coastal resiliency. And this is generally consistent with the approach set forth in the CARP plan, although the CARP does not generally endorse increase of development within flood-prone areas and dune crest setbacks. And that's what we're having largely in that second story. So not in the ground floor area, but in the second story area. And although the property is located within a sheltered area where recent shoreline recession has not been identified, shorelines are dynamic areas. And the slosh model, it's got this awful term, sea, lake, and overland surges from hurricane models commissioned by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's the most sophisticated mathematical model developed by the National Weather Service to calculate potential surge heights from hurricanes. They show that a Category 2 storm would inundate much of the Devon area. So sea level rise and the potential increase in intensity of storms underscores the importance of adhering to coastal setback requirements and protecting the natural features, including the primary dune. And while most of the proposed structures are proposed to be relocated landward compared to the existing, the amount of relocation for the proposed structures is small, and the new locations require large variances from the minimum dune crest setbacks. The beach and dunes have habitat value for migratory birds, as well as ecological values and reducing flood and storm impacts. And the building permit file documents the existence of piping plovers on the beach in 2014. So the minimum dune crest setback in this area is 150 feet. The new clubhouse is proposed to be located 43.3 feet from the dune crest, which represents 29% of the minimum setback required. It's bigger than larger than the existing setback of the clubhouse, which is only 23.7 feet from the dune crest. So while movement is back from the dune crest, it's a positive feature, but the gross floor area of the clubhouse is proposed to increase from 9,399 square feet to 15,051 square feet, which represents a 60% expansion. We continue to register concern with the proposed amount of new development and the disturbance within the dune crest setback area. And the ZBA will have to consider if the environmental improvements provided by the 19.6 feet increased setback is sufficient to offset the 5,652 square feet of new development in this area. It's also a concern that regrading proposed north of the clubhouse at the top of the dune crest has the potential to destabilize the dune. And maybe we need to talk more about whether it's regrading or it is rebuilding the dune. But the way that we were seeing it was a grading project without full revegetation. And I'll get back to that in a moment. The bathhouse and sailing center, they're currently one building. They're proposed to be two buildings. They're proposed to increase the setback to 36% and 39% of the minimum 150-foot dune crest setback. And the size is not increasing much more than the combined two buildings, only about 379 square feet. And in addition to the dune crest setbacks for the buildings, the northwest tennis courts, the northeast tennis courts, the concrete pad west of the clubhouse, and other decks and walkways will require variances from the minimum 150-foot setback from the top of the dune crest, as specifically listed in Table 2. And we note that the walkway to the dock is classified as part of a coastal structure. It's not required to meet the minimum dune crest setback. However, the proposed deck, on top of the walkway, which is proposed to support a flagpole, is proposed right immediately atop the dune crest. And so a 150-foot dune crest setback is required for that. So the need for this deck structure in this location must be closely assessed. We've previously requested that this aspect of the scope be removed from the project to avoid direct impacts to the dune and the surrounding area. We note it's in the velocity elevation 10 flood zone, and during storms, deck material can be ripped off during high wind or water conditions, become projectiles, impacting nearby set structures, causing additional damage. The applicant has explained that the flagpole is an important feature of the yacht club and that it has a ceremonial function. However, retaining the flagpole on the walkway, we believe, can be accommodated without the deck. We need to hear more about that. So in summary, the increase in gross floor area site-wide is 43%, but the building requiring, the largest building requiring the dune setback variance is proposing to increase 60% in gross floor area. There are large increases as compared to existing facilities, and the existing facility built well before zoning already represents a level of development that would be difficult to achieve, if not impossible, if applying the modern standards. Underscoring the concern for the undue disturbance to the dune and the lack of sufficient dune crest setbacks is the proposed location of 20,514 square feet of buildings. That's the clubhouse, the bathhouse, the sailing center, all seaward of the CHA, the Coastal Erosion Hazard Act boundary, which will require variances from Part 505 NYCRR of the state code, where no structures are permitted to be located. And then finally, a wide swath of dune area between the clubhouse and the beach is denuded and disturbed. Vegetated dunes are more stable and provide better coastal protection than unvegetated dunes. Regrading is also proposed in this area, and we recognize that regrading the property for the septic system and the drainage structures is necessary to achieve the minimum groundwater setbacks, but the grading required for the septic system does not require regrading the dune, which is on the other side or seaward of the building. So we're concerned that the grading is not warranted. We recommend that this disturbance be minimized or avoided. And a portion of this area is proposed to be revegetated, but we don't really understand. This is here, that area, there, supposed to be graded, not supposed to be revegetated, and we would recommend that at a minimum. So in short, the proposal to relocate the buildings will help enhance coastal resiliency, but the small amount of relocation coupled with a significant amount of GFA remains a concern, and we'll need to demonstrate compliance with the code. In terms of the flood hazard overlay, the project proposed to comply with the current standards. Rich Warren talked a lot about what the standards are and the minimum first floor requirements, and even a little bit more of what our code requires in order to meet the limit of moderate wave action line. The 3 buildings that are going to be partially seaward of that, they are constructing them, proposing to construct them to meet the velocity zone standards, which is the highest standards that FEMA puts forth. That is not in our code. That is recommended. We appreciate that that's what's being proposed. We note that the yacht club is already a 100-year plus institution, and it is expected to have a life service longer than for a typical residential structure. And for that reason, we ask for consideration given to building new buildings to a higher base flood elevation, to be looking at the sea level rise projections for this area and for a service life of the buildings and structures so much longer. Now, alternatively, I'm not sure that I totally understood, as this building, the buildings are proposed to be on piles, whether that construction standard would allow those buildings to be raised in the future.
Yes, that was my question.
Okay, we'll go back to the applicant. I believe that's what I heard.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think that.
Okay, so let's go back to see that. That would be a way to be looking into the future, because we're asking the applicant to consider something that's not in our code, that's not, we haven't even set the standards for what the sea level rise projections and what they would have to meet. We understand that is an onus, but we would want that to be looked at. All the buildings are coming down except for one. This is the time to be looking at what should be happening for the next 100 years. And we appreciate that that's what they want to look at. Okay, so we finally, there's just a little bit more to talk about the variances, the front yard. The application has 2 front yards, the waterfront and then Abrams Landing Road. And Rich Warren spoke about how the clubhouse is proposed to be further from that than the existing building, but it will still require 25.1 foot setback. There's the decks and concrete platforms, and 47 feet for the concrete platform and 73.8 feet for the clubhouse. That's all listed in table 5, and that's from Abrams Landing Road, which in that area it's proposed to be graded and landscaped, and there is landscape plans talking about the white pines and trees and pasture rows proposed to be planted, and native trees and shrubs, as well as there was an illustration showing like the build out over time as to how the vegetation would fill it out and what it would look like over time, particularly in that area. One last thing, the dune restoration and revegetation plan, it's pre-existing non-conforming with respect to clearing. They're proposing a net revegetation of approximately 53,566 square feet or 1.2 acres compared to the existing conditions. We note that additional planting in the vicinity of the dune and the dock area proposed to be regraded would increase the protection of the dune and improve the resiliency. And we also, again, have questions about the regrading in that area. So in conclusion, several sections of the TAM report indicate that there are alternatives that should be explored. Now's the time to do it, including maximizing setbacks between the grading activities and the wetlands, seeking alternative locations for staff housing, raising the elevations of the buildings, eliminating the grading of the dune adjacent to the clubhouse. And we also note that the expansion of the gross floor area and the new structures in areas requiring dune crest and wetland setbacks must be justified as the minimum necessaries. And the alternatives should be considered as part of the secret review and of the variance process.
Okay,
Thank you.
we have a drainage plan. Do you have a comment about the drainage plan that was submitted?
Yes, we've gone over that with the engineer. And I think there are a couple of questions still outstanding, but it's largely found to be acceptable.
Okay. Is anybody going to run us through that tonight, or that's not for tonight?
Well, if you have specific questions, I think we ought to give them an opportunity to come back to us on it. They might not have, you know.
Okay, they can do that. I
if you
just
wanna
have
give us
concerns
specific-
about the drainage and the closeness behind the south tennis courts where they're removing the walkway bridge. You know, how's that all going to go between these wetlands all the way across, and where's it going to end up? And you mentioned controls for some, you know, stormwater runoff, I guess, from the tennis courts, but it's all going to go into the wetlands?
Yeah, we really worked with the engineer to say, is this drainage? Because they're going to be building up the grade of the land
Yeah, that's a concern, yes.
in order to allow there to be the separation, the depth to the groundwater. And we were asking whether that was going to be affecting the hydrology of the wetlands. We went back and forth with it for some time. I think we've excerpted what his comments were about the plans in one of the appendices, but he was basically indicating that it would work and it would be an improvement. In terms of what's going to happen, how the walkway over the wetlands is going to be removed and what equipment is going to be used, we've asked for more detail on that. It's just, it's generally going in a positive direction, that the details can be worked out as to how it's going to do it so that it wouldn't harm the wetlands, right? We don't want heavy machinery going in that area, et cetera.
All right, and the tennis courts back up right onto that. What's going to be behind that? It looks like there's no
they're
access
right
behind it.
now.
What?
Those ones backing right up are not proposed to be moved.
Yeah,
But
there's going to be no walk behind it. There'll be no access for people to.
Looks like there's a little bit of clearing behind them just to get around them, but
The limit of disturbance is the solid red dotted line. So, you know, that's where they're saying they're not going beyond, right, for these tennis courts. So all of this is getting disturbed. The sanitary system for the existing staff residences here, that's all getting removed, but it's all getting revegetated. I'm trying to find the drainage plan because I know it's in here. I just forgot what sheet is it? And the engineer has, just to echo what Lisa's saying, has reviewed it in depth. I mean, I think there's some detail questions left, but he has not found substantial deficiencies in what they're proposing. Proposing is compliant with code.
Okay, the town's engineer that was?
Yes, the
You're
town
talking about the
consulting.
town's engineer.
Yes.
yes. And they've also submitted a stormwater,
Stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is
Prevention,
required
right.
because
Okay.
they are within the MS4 area that DEC regulates. Those standards also, speak to stormwater quantity and quality controls, both during construction and after. So that will be reviewed by our engineer as well as the state. That review is ongoing, but again, he has not found significant deficiencies yet.
Okay. But he's still reviewing it.
Yeah, well, so that's what we wanted you to kind of get an idea as to how what the layout of these are. Is that acceptable? These other things, they've done enough to show us they know how to do a good plan to make it work, and we're convinced that that's the case. The question is, how much building? Where is it proposed, the intensity?
So this is the stormwater, the grading and drainage plan. So you can see the red lines show the different, like the new topography of the site, right? And if we could zoom in, you would see that the backdrop of how significant the change is, right? It's in some areas, it's like up to 5 feet, but mostly it's a couple of feet where they're, again, bringing the surface of the land up in order to meet the separation distance. These are the sanitary systems, right? And the leaching facilities associated with those. And then these are the dry wells, right? Kind of located throughout the site in different places. So they're not getting any closer to the wet, I mean, there's none now, right? So, but they're not right on top of the wetlands, but they are relatively close, but there's none down here like you were asking about.
Okay, because there's something shows an underground pipe, and I was wondering what that's for. On the survey I'm looking at.
The existing survey?
Is it the existing survey or the
Yeah.
I think that's
proposed?
coming out. isn't
So
it?
that's coming out, the underground pipe? I'm looking at this, right, well, it's hard to see, but right on there, it says there's an underground pipe.
What is that?
Okay. There is an existing one. Yeah.
There's an existing underground collapsed pipe that's underneath the tennis court. So that pipe,
Is that up here?
that pipe is right there. You can see there's
Yeah, you can
drainage
hardly
ditch
see it.
here. I touched it. I should have. Drainage ditch that comes here, and then there's a pipe that runs underneath the 2 tennis courts through here that is collapsed, that doesn't work. So because this drainage in this area pools up, there's a land bridge here. When we were out there in the field, I pointed out to you that Larry Penny had talked to Devon Yacht Club at one point that they should there's a plastic PVC pipe that's laying on the ground here, around to here, with a pump right there, so that when this fills up and starts to flood, they can get the water where it's meant to go, because that pipe is collapsed underneath. With the removal of the land bridge through here, this will all interconnect.
It'll just
And
flow
drainage-
through.
drainage-
You're not
drainage
gonna
will
have another pipe,
Work
okay,
again.
okay.
That collapsed pipe, it can be seen to the east as a cast iron 4-inch pipe that's sticking out of the ground. I saw it this morning.
Yeah, it looked like an Orangeburg pipe. like the
Orangeburg or
old
something, yeah.
Orangeburg pipe.
Yeah, but it doesn't function.
Doesn't function. Yeah, that's
It's very brittle, that stuff. Lisa, I have a couple of questions for you, just brief, kind of like overall questions, and then we'll go to. On an overall basis, was basically what we're hearing tonight. Do you agree with the applicant that we should look at this thing as a whole environmentally? This project as a whole?
You've got to do both.
Okay,
You have to, look, we're asking you, is this going to meet
Yeah.
variance standards?
Right.
Because if it doesn't, the planning board can't go ahead when the application can't go ahead. So if you're just going to be looking at the general,
no, I think we all have an intent to get into the meat of
Yeah.
of this application, so there's, from a general overview, when we're done, do we look at in our balancing test, do we look at the benefit from the removal of the staff housing versus the growth in the staff housing? And the reason I ask that question is, do we think there's a greater intensity of use on the property, with understanding that construction is a large project? Is there an intensity of use that we should be weighing in that is increased as well?
okay, so
Excuse me 1 second. Can you please bring that microphone down on the podium? Thank you.
intensity can be defined a number of ways. So intensity could be the amount of usage, right? So the club is saying that the membership is remaining the same, and the occupancy and the time of year that's being used, all of that is remaining the same. They are also saying that the building coverage, the footprint, is the same or smaller. What we're pointing out is the gross square footage is increasing. So all of those things can go into your weighing act in terms of intensity. You can define it as to how.
I agree.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, I do. It's maybe more of an observation, but, so we're going to look at every one of these variances individually and decide whether or not there can be some flexibility in here, and we can make recommendations, whether we're willing to approve or not approve. But from the presentations, both yours and ones done by Mr. Warren tonight, I'm looking at a parcel that has constrictions or on 3 sides that are environmental, and on the 4th side is where we have a roadway. So while I'm hearing how close they are and how we all know, we've been out to the site, how sensitive the site is and how beautiful it is, I'm not sure that I see a path without eliminating things that'll actually improve some of this. In other words, we can say this should be further from the wetland, but then it would crash into something else. And separate of the fact that we're adding some square footage here of usage as a separate issue, when I look at that very tight existing plan, and I ask myself, how do we move one place to another? It's going to take careful analysis to figure out that there are ways to move one of these features and still allow the same usage on the property that was there. And that was pointed out by Mr. Warren, is that I guess since it's pre-existing and they want to have everything they have, they're a little less interested in saying, well, we'll give up a tennis court or we'll give up some parking if that helps. So it's a very tight spot, and it's something here that you've made some nice recommendations, things that you see that the planning board has considered already, and that we should be considering. It's going to be difficult to see where some of these things can be moved to. Yeah, we can move it further from wetland, but then we're crashing into another constriction. So I do think this is a tricky one, and it's also complicated from that point of view. So when I'm looking at it now, I can't necessarily see without eliminating features that you can do many significant improvements. There might be a foot or two here or there, and we should examine that. But I'm not so sure. I see a lot of restricted areas here, and that's that. I think considering what's going to go on with the potential regrading, I'd like to have that much better explained to us, because that's very critical. I stood out there yesterday and I looked at it, and I thought to myself, what is the future of this spot? But we do have a marina that's existing and is going to stay. And we do have the wetlands that are now, very well described. So I'm not making a judgment. I'm just saying that at this point, we'll look at each one of these. But from the planning point of view, where is the flexibility without us eliminating a feature, without saying you can't have on staff housing. You just can't have it, on site housing. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that you can say, let's improve this, but then I look at it and say, well, if we move this, we have to move that. And, it's a very tight lot.
It's a very tight lot that's intensely developed.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. I mean, you've got sites a couple lots down that there's going to be one house, right? And it's got the same environmental features, and you're looking where that one house will go, and here there's so much. So and the applicant has indicated their need to have all of the improvements on the site.
Yeah.
So I don't envy your position. It is not something that you can just see to do. We want your input in order to move forward.
Denise, you have any questions?
I just want to give a lot of thought to what I talked about earlier about, there are 4 FEMA zones traversing this property, and all of them are within the structures that are being demolished and proposed. So I think a real lot of consideration is realizing sea level will rise, which will increase the elevation of tides and flooding. And the way we go about construction standards, I think, for the future has to be looked at in terms, because it will change over time. So for me, I think there's a lot of, I have to take a little bit of time to process everything I've heard tonight, but
Yeah, I agree.
There's a
I think-
lot to, thank you, because you've both given us a very good overview. But with that, all this information comes a moment to have to really reflect on, because they are asking for a natural resource special permit. And how does it meet the standards? So that's where I'm going. So I need
Great,
more time
but
to
we
think.
might have some questions for Rich, and I could
Yep.
probably bring Rich up and we can ask Rich some questions. Rich, one of the things I have is on the TAM, and I think kind of rightly brings up is the question of the stabilization of the dune, the existing dune and dune vegetation. So you want to address that and what your thought is?
Sure. I almost feel like people are making out to be a boogeyman that's really not.
I can't hear you.
I almost think it's like people making out to be a boogeyman that's not. What the intention is simply to get some additional fill in front of the clubhouse to restore the hole in the dune. When you stand in the back of the clubhouse and you look towards the water, the dunes on either side come down like this, and then it's flat. And it provides an avenue for the storms when they come to drive straight through there. And the idea was the clubhouse is coming up. We can raise some of that grade up to try to reconnect the dune and replant the dune. There's no advantage to the club by doing this other than resiliency. It's not as though they're getting something that's beneficial for them. It's about resiliency and trying to restore the dune in that area. That's all it was. So it's not something
It
nefarious.
will be replanted and.
Yeah, we've got a plan that shows
Yep.
replanting. I want just to offer a comment, which I mentioned before, but I just want to reiterate, is that I know from a code perspective, it says since we're tearing these buildings down, you have to look at that as new construction. That's not fair. That's really not fair, because I think that when you evaluate this, you have to evaluate also what's there on the property today. It's allowed to be there, that'll be there tomorrow if you decide that we're not going to give these variances. And I think that part of the weighing that you look at was what I was talking about before, is that I think you have to look at this holistically and not just at the numbers, because as I said, the numbers could be daunting. But when you look at the table that is in the TAM, every element is getting better. We're improving setbacks. Even though the setback of the building right now is 5.8 feet from the street, it's going to go to 40 feet. And there's another 60 feet of vegetation on the outside of that.
So just ask you a question on the statement, it's not fair. Let's say this is not this property. Let's say it's a property on the bluffs of Montauk and the house is right on the bluff crest, right on the bluff crest.
Yeah.
And they want to tear down that house and redevelop the property.
Yeah.
What's the standard?
I think when you evaluate the difference of a house on the bluff in Montauk, where the bluffs are eroding, where you stand there and you can see the erosion of the bluff, where here you've got a stable property where we've shown on surveys that this is growing out. I think you have to evaluate these on a site-specific basis, which is what I mentioned before. Site-specific, project.
Even if say it's not on the edge of the bluff, say it's within the setback of a bluff,
Mhm.
of redevelopment of a site, what should be the standard? Say it's, if there were setbacks 100 feet, say it's 75 feet, what should be the standard?
I don't know that you can compare a house, single-family residence. I think a lot of it may have to do also with what's behind it. What's behind the house? Are there wetlands pockets behind the house in Montauk that you can't move back because you got wetlands situation there? I mean, we've got restrictions coming from all different sides here. And what we tried to do is we tried to make a plan that's better. From an environmental perspective, that's better, and something that suits the needs of this club. And I think you'd be hard pressed to say that the plan that we have before you is not environmentally better than what's existing there today. And I do think that that's probably something that should be in the thought process. We've worked very hard to try to do what we can do. At the same time, there's a club here that has an imposition on them from regulations that weren't there when they bought this property, unlike the guy in Montauk, probably. So I don't think that it's just a matter of looking at the numbers. I think that part of your charge should be, or at least I think from from a perspective of sitting on a board to evaluate this kind of project that you probably don't see very often, I think you can't just forget about what's there and say, well, it's 38% of the setback. Well, the existing might be 20% of the setback. We've made it better. We've made it better from an environmental perspective, and I think that from a natural resource point of view, you're looking at natural resource permits, environmental permits, is what we're doing here is better than what's existing. And I think you'd be hard pressed to say it's not.
I don't know. I also think that's part of the difficult task we have with this application is to do that balancing test. So, and that's why I'm asking that question.
Yep.
Do we have any questions?
No.
We're here to answer any, do you have questions? You'll send them to us. We'll respond back.
I think we should, I would recommend we schedule maybe another evening. Looking at more specifics, right? So I think we have concerns about the drainage plan.
Yes.
I think we have concerns maybe about,
Close proximity to wetlands.
proximity to wetlands, the grading. We need,
Yes.
if you can, in our next scheduled time, and we can schedule it, is take a look at those and dig down into more of the weeds on those things so that we get a good view of that. Because that's what's important to us.
Okay.
Also, I raised a question of intensity of use. Is that part of the balancing test? And is this right now, is a future, will it be used year round instead of seasonally? Those are things that,
Clubhouse won't be heated.
So, and again, I don't know how important that is, but I think those are questions we should look at.
And in the future, there won't be any increase in the marina. It's going to remain.
No increase in the marina, no increase in membership, no increase in the types of services they have, no increase in housing. The additional parking that we have is something that the planning department recommended us to try to improve, so we improved it. And we have 40 now, and we were able to get to 78 because the parking requirement for the site under the town code is 226. You put 226 parking spaces on there, you probably lose all the tennis, and it's all a big parking lot. So when you look at the operations of the club that's operated today with the 40 that are there, the club has managed to work out the operations of this club with 40, but we're now going to provide 78 on site. They do have some events where they get a permit from the town. I think it's 5 events a year where they get a permit to be able to use the parking at the end of Abrams Landing Road. So, but we're happy to talk the details with you. But I just ask you with all sincerity that I don't think this is just about numbers. I think that it's something that you have to look at in terms of what are the improvements of this club and what have they done to try to make it better from an environmental perspective and not just get lost in the numbers and not see that the number of variances is daunting, where every little single element here winds up getting measured out to be determined to be a variance, where when you take a step back and look at it, there is an environmental improvement here. And I think that that's part of the natural resource permit process that you charge to look at. So.
Okay. Is there anything else that we mentioned grading, drainage, looking at maybe some of these
Eliminating
grade setbacks in more detail.
You talked about elevation, and my concern about talking about going up much more in elevation is just changing.
And we didn't dig in. Yeah, you're right. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying you're changing the exterior elevations of all the then buildings, and that's another factor.
Let's take a look at the impact on.
So what is, if we were to ask for an increased first floor elevation, what is the overall impact, And so I think that can be suggested, but we have to balance that against what it would do for the elevation from the exterior.
And also the proposed expansion of GFA and new structures in areas requiring dune crest and wetland setbacks really has to be justified as being the minimum necessary.
Can I just suggest maybe you guys want to discuss it and actually come up with a list, of specific topics?
Well, I think we're trying to throw out a list.
I mean, I'm just
trying to throw out a list right now.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just didn't know if that's, everyone, if
These are
I were in your
things-
place, I'd be, and 2 hours after the meeting, I'm gonna go, why didn't I say that? I'm interested in this other thing, and I never told them. That's all. I would just, if you wanted to think about it and maybe have the staff send us a list of the board members who are interested in talking about the following 7 things or 24 things, or, it's just a suggestion.
I mean, it's just a whole lot of it, that looking
Yeah,
at the the whole thing.
It's a complicated project.
It's very
We recognize
complicated.
that.
So, picking out a little thing here and there, there's a lot of them, but overall, there are concerns.
It's really exploring all the alternatives of the concerns we have.
Are we going to meet before the planning board meets? Okay, how's this working?
I think yes, and I don't,
Yes,
I think
I
there
think we
needs to be
should.
another meeting
I think
before
so,
the planning,
too.
because
I think we need another
they're
meeting, yeah.
seeking, the planning board is seeking comments from us to give them guidance, so where to go with this. So that's the goal here. So, and I think it's an appropriate goal. So we probably should look at when's our next meeting. I agree with you that we should probably come up with a list, and that's easy enough to do.
Well, I mean, we know
Okay, but
what
we can't
want.
approve
We can tell them
the-
right now.
Well, again, drainage, grading,
Maximizing setbacks between grading activities and wetlands.
Elevations.
and impact from the view shed too, as far as impact on the improvements on the land, right? From a
Eliminating
massing
grading of
standpoint.
dune adjacent to the clubhouse, further proposed expansion of GFA and new structures and areas requiring dune crests.
First off, when would we have a meeting? Because that might
Okay.
send us,
Um,
And Sam,
we're heading into holidays. We don't have many meetings left.
I would just like to pipe in. I would, if I had a vote, and I don't, and I understand that, just to kind of get together a list, like after this meeting, we'll help take notes.
I agree.
Just so the applicant has really clear
agree.
guidance. And after we give them that, you'll see how long that takes you to respond to. Because if you really do need very specific information in order to give the guidance, I think that's the best way to get it.
Okay.
I just want to also, sorry,
Okay.
just be mindful, this is the public hearing, so without stating a date certain of a continuation of a hearing, you'll have to repost and renotice everything. We could pick a date and, okay.
yeah, it's no big deal.
Do we pick a date? You're saying, should we?
If they're fine with waiving it, I mean, because the alternative would be just to pick a date.
Tonight, we'll
So you
repost.
repost, yeah.
We want to move this along too, so I want to get the second while it's fresh on our minds too. It's smart. So, okay, I think we'll come back to you with a list. And we'll go from there, schedule a meeting from there.
Are you thinking like January?
Yeah, I think, well,
Yeah, we don't have any more meetings.
Right.
Well, we,
I've got a schedule that I have to deal with too, so I'm just trying to figure out kind of what you're.
we just have to be
Thank you.
careful also. The board will be able to develop a list. They're not going to talk about this again without you here. We have an open hearing now, right? So whether somebody, between Samantha and myself and planning, listen again and just write down what they said by email without violating open meetings law. We have to be careful of all of these things. So there's not going to be another discussion. So we have 3 meetings in December. You guys could get on any one of them, or we also brought the whole calendar for 2025. So to answer your question, whatever you want,
What's your last meeting in December?
the 17th.
Well, that's a work session, though.
That's a work session, but we could have a
Could you
hearing.
notice that for?
The other option, which I was going to state earlier, not to overcomplicate it, is we can state a date certain now. As it approaches, after we develop this list, we
could always-
acknowledge it on the 17th and we kick it out again. I know this is not just in the interest of
Yep.
saving postage, it's just,
Yeah, so why don't we set it for the 17th?
is that okay with the board?
I'll
Oh,
figure
Okay.
out.
No,
I'll figure
okay,
out a
we have one that's a no.
I'm fine with it, yeah. I'm fine
I
with it.
think
Do we
there,
send our question,
We'll do what we need to do to be mindful of the record.
okay,
Samantha can come up with the list that we stated. Like I said, we'll email you guys something.
Okay.
All right, I think there might be some people in the public here. If you want, is there anybody in the public that would like to address this application this evening? No? Okay. Matt, is there anybody online?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to set a tentative
Continuation date.
December 17th.
Yep.
For continuation.
We'll get you a list ASAP.
Thank you. Thank you for listening tonight.
Yeah,
Thank
it would
you.
be a continuation if we're saying a date, yeah. Okay.
Somewhere in the middle of this.
I always lose my stuff. Papers. Okay.
Thank you,
Hi,
Lisa.
Jane.
It's cold out there. It's freezing out there.
Should have brought a pillow, too.
I thought about it on my feet up. It's cold out there, let me tell you.
Okay.
Okay, we had a second public hearing scheduled for this evening, and that is 117 BBA LLC at 117 Bayview Avenue, Amagansett. That was Suffolk Tax Map number 300-84-1-3.1. That was scheduled for this evening. The applicant has asked for an adjournment. Council, do we need to, I think, do we need to also schedule another hearing for this?
Yes, sorry, Terry. We're going to use the same date as a holding date.
December 17th. is
December
turning in.
17th. We know that based on the board's calendar, that's identified as the work session. But we want to keep demonstrating that we're willing to move this along, but the 10th is too soon. 17th is our last meeting. We'll see how this and Devon shakes out, and we may just have to change that to a public hearing date. We're going to go out with a bang for the year if we have
Okay,
to.
that's all you got, no more?
Is that
Okay,
the last
come on,
meeting?
more.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's the long way of saying yes. This will be continued on the 17th, or it will be rescheduled for the 17th, the public hearing.
Right, next, we have, I'm gonna bring up Franzetti next, I guess. We'll talk about Franzetti, that would be Tina. We're gonna come up and talk about it. So Franzetti, as you know, board members, this was a zoning lot line change. We already made a decision on that, but there was no secret determination. We now have a short form filled out in front of us. I'm going to ask Tina if you can just brief us on this, and then we need to make a decision this evening on this form.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen and I will talk you through it. So Franzetti minor subdivision, it is a 2-lot subdivision, 25 Talkhouse Lane in Montauk. The applicant completed an EAF Part 1 that the planning department has reviewed and found adequate for progressing with the SECRA process. The action is unlisted pursuant to SECRA, and what we're recommending is that the zoning board conduct an uncoordinated review, which means you would issue your own independent determination of significance, and then the planning board, when they make their final decision, they will also issue one. That's appropriate for unlisted actions. The planning board in this case had requested the board to determine whether or not this application was eligible for a large lot area variance, because without that area variance, the project couldn't have been discussed any further. So this Part 2 impact assessment I have on the screen right now You will see that the planning department recommends that all of these categories are all within the no or small impact thresholds. Again, due to the kind of relatively, site-specific and minor nature of the action, that was our recommendation. And I do have some elaboration of the logic supporting that within the Part 3. 2 lots are going to be created, as the board knows. Only one will require the area variance. The other complies with the B resident zone. The parcel's in an area where there's a split zone. So to the north is A residence, to the south is B. And it kind of is not starkly contrasting to the surrounding area. It's also consistent with the comprehensive plan in the sense that it supports affordable housing, as that's the purpose of the subdivision.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Regarding that,
I'm sorry?
how can we say it creation of affordable housing opportunities? This application had nothing to do with really affordable housing.
Right. So not in the general sense, but the purpose that we were told by the applicant is to create a lot for their child to have their own home. So we're taking them at their word that that's what it's for. And she said, I think that the woman's a teacher and can't afford, I didn't independently verify that. Again, I'm taking it at their word.
It was stated on the record for that. It was.
Yeah, so
But that doesn't run with
How
the
do we know
land.
that that's what they're going to do? I mean, is there something in our
I don't know.
resolution then that
They're going to do.
I'm not doubting that what they're going to do, but
I'm not
I'm just
either.
saying in language for a secret determination, I think we should be, in my opinion, would be sticking to the plan. So generally consistent, the comprehensive plan and policies of the town, period.
okay.
Right, because I think we agreed when this board made a decision about whether or not to grant that variance, we understood their narrative, but to me that's different than a secret form.
does this relate back at all to the Part 1 that was submitted by the agent?
Yes.
Because they too say affordable building lot. And there was one item in number 7, he just missed it a little bit, about he didn't specify that it's in a critical environmental area. Question number 7 on that.
So the EAF mapper results should have shown that. So critical environmental area and its environs. So the purpose of that is to protect water quality, right? And the measures that would be incorporated into the action are an IA system, right? So any new development will have to have an IA system that protects groundwater quality. And we would include stormwater management, right, as part of the subdivision review. So although the applicant didn't say that, we did include the mapper results as part of the record for the project and did include this text here with respect to how the resources that make up the CEA are being protected with this action.
Okay, so it's okay, he just didn't identify it, which said, if yes, identify.
They didn't identify it, but in the information we put in the record, it is on the record, and it is assessed within the negative declaration, which is important.
I don't understand the opposition for the wording that deals with the affordable housing opportunity. I don't understand the opposition to that because I feel this wording supports the record. And I think that they represented it. I think that if we take it out, I could think it's more detrimental.
I would agree with that.
I would say leave it.
How do you feel, Ed?
Well, is there a difference between describing something as affordable housing and an affordable lot?
It
Affordable
says
housing,
opportunity. It says an opportunity. So the town is recognizing that the applicant came to us
Right.
on the record, stated that they were doing it for their daughter family for affordable reasons, and it is an opportunity. I don't see the wrong in stating that.
Because it is on the record and it did come into play with how I made my decision.
Right. And I mean, that's why I put it in, because the planning board was similarly, everybody's sensitive to that issue in this town. The only thing I would say is it's not going to be like in the AHO or something, in the overlay zone. So it won't be like affordable housing in perpetuity.
Right.
But it's going to keep a local family here.
Right.
So I still
think it's
that's-
appropriate. That's
Yeah.
I think so too. I really don't have a problem with the language.
The only reason I was drilling in on it is because I understand the code, East Hampton Town Code has a very specific designation to use the word affordable. So that's all I was trying to put down. Again, I think to the point, yes, I mean, we understood the narrative and that's in our determination. Right, that would be in our
Again, I'm
determination.
just-
So again, I don't want to,
I'll reiterate
It's
that it's
Reflected in the
referencing the
record.
comprehensive
Yep.
plan and the policies of the town. So it's not representing the code of the town, but a policy. So I think there's a differentiation there. But that's my feeling. Then?
Well, no, I'm agreeing with that. I'm saying if it had been described as affordable housing, it comes under a sort of a different kind of connotation, what it is. As affordable opportunity, that's what was brought up at the hearing. She brought up and said, my daughter has no opportunity to live in this town. It's a factor in the decision making. So I
The
think
word
that,
opportunity gives it a different,
well, I think that
take out the
she
word
presented
housing.
it that way
no,
too.
it's part of our record.
Affordable
It was the
opportunity.
reason they came before us for what they wanted to do.
maybe I just,
I mean, I think the wording is fine.
okay, yeah. I mean, I don't see harm in it, to be honest.
No.
That's what we're worried about.
It's, let's move on.
All right, next.
The other thing that came up during the environmental review was the potential archaeological significance of the property. It is next to a Montauk burial ground. The applicant conducted a phase 1 archaeological study, phase 1A archaeological record search and a phase 1B archaeological testing study. They did do that in accordance with an approved protocol by the planning board, and they did coordinate with the Chief Farrow of the Montaukets while they were conducting the work. No significant resources were found on the lot, and therefore there's no impacts anticipated to archaeological historic resources from the proposed action. So considering all of that, our recommendation was that there's no significant environmental adverse impacts, and the negative declaration is recommended.
It's fine.
Okay, board members, can we have a motion? Odds deck, neg deck, I believe this should be a negative deck in my feeling. So, anybody have any other concerns?
No, I'm not fine with
You
it.
all think it's a negative deck? And then in Franzetti, hold on a minute.
Everybody think that?
Yeah, I think so. Can I borrow your pen?
I'm making a motion to accept the negative declaration.
Second,
Oh, no, I haven't done it yet.
you haven't done it yet?
Franzetti, 25 Talkhouse Lane, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-13-2-18.1. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a negative declaration on the SEQA
Second.
application.
concur.
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 Can we also add to that?
Sign this now?
Yeah, can we also add to that just that the direction to allow the chair to sign the document?
Right.
The whole board is okay with that too, yes.
I'm okay with that.
It's fine.
Yes, you can sign it.
I will sign it now.
He's got the pen.
Sign it fast before we change our mind.
Thank you. Then I think at this point, do we discuss the resolution? Do we adopt that?
Let's do whatever Brian is here for, because I feel
Say
bad
that
for him.
again?
Let's do whatever Brian is here for.
Brian's got something to say? Okay.
We have to go back.
Okay.
No, we're not done.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, Inlet
That's right, work
Seafood is,
session. So
oh,
we
okay.
have an administrative application, that's Inlet Seafood at 541 East Lake Drive, Montauk. Suffolk Tax Map number 300-6-2-3.1 and 36. Brian?
Good evening, board members. This is, as the chairman had indicated, this is Inlet Seafood. As you know, the Inlet Seafood property is at the northern terminus of East Lake Drive. It's the northernmost property. This is most of the property from our aerial photographs. It's a multiple business complex as defined by the code with a commercial fishing dock and a restaurant. I have the rest of the property if you want to see it. The Montauk Inlet Channel is over here, and the jetties are just to the north. The application is for maintenance dredging in a manner consistent with the past practices of the property. It is to dredge within about a 13,000 square foot area, broken up into these two areas shown on the survey, to a depth of 8 feet at mean low water. Dredge sediments will be dewatered to the north of the boat basin and spread out in this area, which is generally unvegetated and used by the property. The parameters of this application are identical to the application that was processed administratively by the planning department in 2018. The permit conditions will likely be identical as well, and the planning department thinks this is a reasonable candidate for administrative review.
Okay.
If you have any questions about the details of the proposal or the past permit, feel free to ask.
I have none. Anybody have any
I have
questions?
no problem with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a motion?
Okay, then in the matter of Inlet Seafood at 541 East Lake Drive, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-6-2-3.1 and 36, I want to make a motion to allow this application to proceed administratively.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have other decisions. It's Schlowendorf at 89 Bayview Avenue in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-106-1-5.4, and that's a CVO inspection. Brian?
Yes, this property is located near the end of Bayview Avenue, not quite towards the end. This was originally a permit that was granted in 2005 for residential construction, one-story house on pilings within wetland jurisdiction. Let me just show you the 2004 aerial. Oh, I'm not sure. So these are pretty much a reflection of the as-built conditions. I think there is some additional gravel area at the southern end of the property now. Maybe it's there in this aerial. It's difficult to tell. But the planning department noticed what we would characterize as some subtle differences between the approval in 2005 and the final survey. Those are summarized in a memorandum that I prepared last week. Just to kind of run, whoops, this isn't what I wanted to bring up. Just to kind of run over some of the numbers with you and where they deviated. The building coverage went up by 500 square feet, the total coverage by 1,200, and the clearing by 440. But if you take a look at the approved survey, and I'm sorry, after I had sent this, I realized that it might have been beneficial if I attached the survey that was originally approved back in 2005 for comparison. I'm sorry I didn't do that. But visually, the improvements are pretty close to identical. It's hard to see where those increases are. I'm going to switch over to I have the approved survey here. I think bringing it up on the screen, I don't know how productive that would be. I think I'd rather show you the final survey and just point out where some of these differences are. What does this do? Why this isn't full screen right now. Oops, sorry for this. So just to point out where maybe some of these differences arrive from, this area of gravel is new. It's away from the wetlands. You can tell the wetlands are to the northeast of the property. The application required a scenic easement. The setbacks are nearly identical. The house was approved at 80. The deck was actually approved at 70, I think is also 79. The gravel area was approved at 75 feet from this wetland. It's 72 and a half. Other than that, again, the planning department finds these differences to be pretty subtle. This is an accurate representation of the clearing. There are some photographs in my memorandum from on the ground there. But because this does deviate from the approval, rather than the planning department sign off directly to the building department on behalf of the board, we're bringing these differences to your attention for you to determine their significance and determine if you're satisfied with the extent of compliance with the permit conditions, or if some other action is warranted.
Any comments, board members?
I have a question on the total coverage, Brian, if I may. So this is a small lot, right? Is this like a 10,000 square foot lot, 0.25?
I think it's less. I think it's about 70. Nope, I'm sorry. It's a little bit more. 12.
Okay.
12.
Right. So I guess I just wanted to understand a little bit more total coverage. You're saying is 1,200 square feet higher than what was approved. Did I get that correctly?
You did.
Okay. So could you just say again why? And to me, that's not an insignificant number relative to a ZBA determination on a lot this size in this area.
I can appreciate that. Obviously, the increase in the building coverage contributes to the total coverage. This gravel area at the south end of the property probably contributes to that as well. And, well, definitely contributes to that as well. The fact that I think relative to the wetland setbacks, which is what put this project in jurisdiction, these parameters of the project are so close to what was approved. I think that goes a long way in the planning department, characterizing these differences as minor.
And just one more, if I may, 440 square feet over on clearing. Where are they relative to max allowable clearing on the lot?
I'd have to do the math. I think they're well under. It's 11,000. Almost the entire lot could be cleared as per code. So they're under the maximum clearing. They're over what had been proposed. And again, if you the difference are subtle. My experience is minor differences in a circumference in a line like this, extrapolated over the distance, ends up becoming mathematically large. But the scenic easement hasn't been encroached into, and these are the setbacks that the planning department thinks are the most important, since that's what the variances were granted from this wetland to the northeast.
Thank you, Brian.
Comments?
I'm okay.
No, okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
Can we have a motion?
Yep, of course. In the matter of Schoellendorf, 89 Bayview Avenue, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-106-1-5.4, I make a motion to, am I approving this with modifications or?
I don't know if it even needs a motion. I think you
It's just a
could
CO, yeah. it's just
sign
a-
off or give the planning department
Yeah, it doesn't need a
permission to
motion,
sign off to
right,
the building
exactly.
department, and I'll take care of it.
Okay,
Just a letter.
Thank you.
thank you.
You fix the minutes? Oh, she couldn't make this correction, so we'll table it.
Okay, tabled.
On resolutions, oh, I see. We did the secret determination. So,
But that, so we did you guys made your secret determination verbally and signed the part 2 and part 3, but I did also circulate pending this discussion, right? The actual papered determination.
Yes.
So
We can make that.
you can make that motion, yeah, and then that resolution will be stamped in. It reiterates the decision that I anticipated you would make tonight.
That was mine. Do you want me to make this?
Sure.
Okay. We've just had the project described by Tina and others. You remember that it was a lot that had been merged some time ago by the current donor, hoping to separate it again to allow for development. One of the lots required a variance because it was undersized because of the A and B determination or the designations of the property. It was a 5-0 approval. And so I'll read into the record here. Then for Franzetti, 25 Talk House Lane, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-13-2-18.1. I'd like to make a motion to accept the determination as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Alan Weinstein at 4 Spread Oak in East Hampton. What was this about?
This was the variance without the hearing.
Rear yard.
Oh, this is a
For the-
4-foot variance in the rear yard, and this was a unanimous approval.
Variance without a hearing, right?
That's good. It was a variance without a hearing. Sometimes, yeah. So in the case of Alan Weinstein at 4 Spread Oak Lane in East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-91-2-16, I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
All right, what time is it? Thank you. With that, council, Vice Chair, we're going to adjourn the meeting and go into executive session for legal matters.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to adjourn the Zoning Board of Appeals on 11/19 at 8:50 PM.
Second.
Concur.
Did you finish it?
Then she's going to do a
No,
second.
and
Okay. Oh, another motion. Okay.
I'm gonna do that one first. Did everybody concur?
no, concur.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session and for the discussion of legal matters.
I'll second it.